honoring our country's birthday, 247 years. And that's what you do. You spend it with friends and family.
So this is a very special day as we reflect upon our country and just what it meant that we would actually have a country that is based on these principles that we would govern ourselves of the people, by the people, and for the people. The work that is happening here at the Center for American Values is among the most important work in the country. And I congratulate the co-founders, Drew Dix and Brad Padula, for the great work that they do. And Sparky. And of course, Drew, you know you got a gem when you talked Sparky Turner into coming here. So thank you, Sparky, and thank you to the team for all that you do. So with that, please stand and remove cover. And what we'll have here is the color guard, then the national anthem by Praxedis Quintana, and then Drew Dix will give us a welcome, and then the invocation by Bill Larimore, and this is the color guard from Westcliff Legion Post 170.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
We've got a lot to do here, but as Kim Munson said, we're here to celebrate the birthday of this nation, 247 years that this country has gone through together and survived through the sacrifices made by the citizens of this great country. And I think it's very proper that we get together on this day and think of it as a celebration for those that made those sacrifices for us. And in line with that, the Center for American Values has a very clear mission, and that's to recognize the sacrifices of all those that built this country and ensure those deeds are remembered forever. That's something that we should be doing to educating our youth, and in some cases, our youth parents need a little tune-up in that regard. We got to go at it full speed ahead, and I want to thank all of those supporters of the center, the families and friends of the center for making this happen. We couldn't do it without the generosity of those supporters, and we've done really good since December. We've hit some milestones, not so much exactly for what we're doing, but for the need of, they want to see it out there more, and we're going to take this on the road, and we're also going to have educational programs virtually, and we're getting that set up because we got some pretty good funding for that. Not totally, but we have a good amount to get started. But I want to thank Brad Padula, co-founder. Brad, wave your hand somewhere. There he is. Right there. A little history on this. 2010 or so, Brad and I were visiting Jerry Murphy, one of the last Medal of Honor recipients from Pueblo, just before me. I'm not the last. I'm the last now, but he made me the last. But he was struggling with some issues, and it was a tough visit. And when we left, seeing him, we stopped off at a neighborhood pub, an Irish pub, because Jerry's very much Irish. And we had a couple of Guinnesses, and we brainstormed the Center for American Values because of we thought guys like Jerry are leaving, and our numbers were a little over, I don't know, 80 or 90 at that time, but now we're down to 65 living Medal of Honor recipients, that the country should know, not so much to honor the recipients per se, but to honor the fact that they were willing to make sacrifices for this great country. And there are also those that have served for the military that have performed far greater deeds than any of us, but there are no witnesses. And the criteria of the medal requires the witnesses. So humbly, we know that there are others out there. So I salute all veterans that have been in combat or ready to go to combat for our country. They deserve our continued recognition. And thank the American Legion Post 170 for doing what you do, especially to honor those and pay honors to those that passed. Because our government doesn't really do that right now. They do not make those honor ceremonies available to everyone. And I think it's organizations like this that are carrying on that tradition. We also have a couple of board members. We got Trevor Terrell over here, and we got Henry Jones. Henry? Oh, there he is. And thank you, Henry, for bringing the general.
You're welcome.
Our good friend has been, good friend that has been, her husband was a friend of Hershey Miyamura and Joan Anello, but Hershey and Joe Anello were in a POW camp together, and we got to know Joe, and when Joe passed, we got to know Joan, and she is, you need to talk with her. She's doesn't have much of a filter when it comes to this country. She left North Korea at a young age and knows what it's like to be in this country and what it was like on the road out in North Korea and the hardships they went through. So if you get a chance, feel free to talk to Joan Anello. And let's see, and I don't think we have another board member here. Sue was coming, but I guess couldn't make it. Rudy Padula, wave your hand here. He's one of the founding donors that made it all happen. When Brad and I left that pub, that Irish pub, we had ideas. Ideas don't happen unless timing is everything. Rudy had just purchased a little building on the Riverwalk, and we told him what we want to do. His eyes rolled around a little bit, and he said, okay, he's done. And he's been a loyal supporter of the center, continued supporter of the center since those days. But, and of course, Patricia, my wife, is here. And so we got a couple of different groups here. We got the locals. We got those along the fence line. We got some that know a little bit further along the fence. And then we got those from, what's that big city up there, Denver? And then Springs and on down. So we got a collection of people that you need to get together more often. And like was said, we need to hang together on issues. And together we can make a difference. And I think the voice that we can't just let somebody else do it for us. We have to feel free to reach out and make a difference. And the thing that the center focuses on a little bit is when we dedicated this on November 10th, 2010, it was at the Veterans Bridge in Pueblo, and we walked over, and because I invited everybody to come to our grand opening. It must have been 10,000 people there, but a lot came. And I'll never forget this young lady that was following behind me, and she said, well, I guess we have another right-wing conservative organization. And I said, well, I never thought of it that way, that only people that think the way we do have honor, integrity, and patriotism. That's it, no more. We are absolutely apolitical, and we believe that to honor this country, because this country gives us so much. And the definition of patriotism is to honor your country. And what does a country do? A country protects us. It protects our sovereignty as a nation and protects our rights. And by golly, we ought to have more patriots now than ever, because we got all kinds of people wanting rights for different things, and we're protecting them. So we should have a lot of patriots out there, but that's worth doing instead of just tearing the country apart because someone didn't anticipate their particular needs. But the country's doing the best it can, and it's going to survive, and we're going to move on. But again, thank you very much. And I want to just briefly say, we're going to hear from my good friend John Ratzenberger after we get into dinner, chuck wagon meal a little bit. But I want to tell you, that probably won't be said when he's introduced, but I met John on a plane with Gary Sinise going to Afghanistan to welcome some of the seriously wounded people, soldiers, Marines, service members from Afghanistan. And there were a bunch. And under those circumstances, you get to know somebody really well. And I want to thank John for staying in touch and for doing what you do and for what you continue to do, because you don't just stand up when the country is obvious it needs help. You stand up all the time for the country, because a strong country needs to be, or a strong economic country needs to be strong militarily. And some people don't understand that. And I'm the last that says we should go to war anymore. Anybody that's been in war and seen young men die alongside of you, especially young draftees, you don't want to go to war. But you still have to have a strong nation so you don't go to war. You don't have to. Because let's face it, if you're strong economically and weak, somebody will try you. And that's a risk that we cannot take. So what John does and what we all do is just keep an awareness up. We're not rattling sabers and all that, absolutely not. But we just need to take care of our military, and our military needs to be the best and the finest there ever was on this earth. And when I say that there's different kinds of people, groups of people, we've got politicians, I guess you gotta have them. We have bureaucrats, I guess they gotta help run the country. You got business people, men and women that built this country. And then you got the military, you got a warrior class that has to be the best there is, so it protects the interests of all of us. So that's what we do also, is to help the military recognize the needs to keep us strong and to defend the pulling on us to be, I don't know how to say this, and I'm getting less sensitive about stuff as I get older, but a military needs to be built on merit, and the very best there is. And there is no discrimination. We got laws about that, but we have to recruit based on strength and the ability to perform and serve. And we will get plenty of diversity if we do that. But we cannot recruit for diversity's sake. Because if you try to stand for everything as a country, soon you stand for nothing. The one thing we have to stand for is this country. So thank you very much. Thanks for listening to me. Feel free to visit the center anytime. It's open 7 days a week. And next, yes, thank you. My neighbor, our neighbor, Bill Larimore. There he is. Will lead us an invocation.
Okay, there's 2 men in America that can handle that hat. Drew is one, who's the other? As I was sitting there, I was just thinking of Billy Jack. This is Drew being less sensitive. Be over a poker game with him. He talked about this military thing, and I'm retired military. And there's just something special about, for example, last week at my pavilion was a 54-year friend that I served with in Korea in the 70s. And out of the blue, the phone call came. Today, we're standing here, and at this table over here is a 52-year friend. Is anybody here 26? Nobody. I was at one point. I was 26 years old when Jay and I served together in 1979 at Fort Bliss, Texas. It's pretty special. If you'd uncover it, and allow me to offer a prayer. Father, I thank you for another day of life and the blessing of spending it here in the Wet Mountain Valley in the United States of America, in Westcliff, Colorado. What a positive parade this morning. And now appropriately spending part of that time with the Liberty Ranch, celebrating our 247th birthday. My wife and I don't have TV. We have a TV, we don't have TV. So we read the news in the morning, and we choose what we want to read. And this morning I read a story that in September of 1774, at the first meeting of the First Continental Congress, they came together, and the first thing on the agenda was a motion that was made that says we should open every session of Congress with a prayer. Well, they all agreed on that, but then with Anabaptists and Quakers and Presbyterian and Episcopalian and Federalists, they couldn't come together to say the prayer. So they didn't have one on the first day, but the second day when they came in, they had made the motion to start the day with prayer. So they invited an Episcopalian priest in who didn't pray. He simply read Psalms 85. And so my prayer today, no, Al, I'm not going to read all 13 verses of Psalm 85 today, but maybe before we go to bed tonight, we can take a look at that verse. It really is about God restoring God's people. It's where mercy and trust met in a verse in the Bible. And so if you get a chance, maybe read Psalm 85. It's good to be together with like-minded folks. Kind of emotional a little bit. Just being in a room with Drew Dix makes me emotional. So Those of you who have chosen to serve rather than to be served, I thank you for your sacrifices. And that's not people in uniform. The Center for American Values folks are serving. Tanya is serving. Her daughter, who sang for us today, is serving, and they're not wearing a uniform, but they're serving our country. And so I'm thankful to be around people who prefer to serve. I'm the only person between you and the chuck wagon, and I'm aware of that. So with that, how about, Lord, would you please bless what Monty has probably been cooking since daylight, just for us. And I'd ask you to bless his meal to our body and to serve you. And it's in your precious and your holy name that I pray. Amen.
Just keep myself. It's the honor they deserve. The year was 47, that's the year that I was born. Now they've laid me down to rest, and I will serve again no more.
Center for American Values, that's how we roll.
Well, we all know him, and we feel like we grew up with him, and that is John Ratzenberger. And he is a devoted American patriot and entrepreneur. He has immersed himself in what makes America great, a country where a truck driver's son wound up being a TV icon. He wrote the book, We've Got It Made in America, a common man's salute to an uncommon country. The book is a collection of essays from his 5 years on the road visiting factory towns throughout the country for the travel show, the John Ratzenberger's Made in America. My friends, John Ratzenberger.
Hi, I'm John Ratzenberger. I'm not from around here. You could probably tell that by the way I'm dressed. I don't own a cowboy hat or a suit like that. Where'd you get that? They just, where? Really, that's nice. That's nice. Well, yeah, I was on Cheers, as many of you know, and younger people might know me by, Hand Me the Pig. Did you know that? Yeah, Hand Me the Pig, Mac the Truck, one of those animation films, yeah. But I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut, which is a factory town on the coast back east. And it was a hard scrabble kind of place. You know, you had all the different nationalities and vying for, you know, against and with each other. So, but the growing up part it was kind of easy in a way because you learned how to do things as a kid because they're all factories and everybody had a skill. Nobody ever called a repairman to come to the house. You know, you just, you did it yourself, your father, your uncle, the guy next door. Everybody pitched in and helped everybody else out. You know, just like here. You know, I'm sure that's what you guys do. But, you know, back there, you know, everybody used tools. Again, this is back in the 50s. I know you're going, oh my God, you don't look that old, John. But, and what a great time to grow up too in America for all of us that did. Carefree, you ride your bicycle anywhere you wanted to. But that was part of growing up, and if your bike broke down and you're 6, 7, 8 miles from home, you had to fix it. There was no cell phones. Even if there were cell phones, you didn't know your telephone number. How many kids called their own home ever? So, right, yeah, so you had to fix your own bike. You had to figure it out. You had to, you know, look around, see what's handy. A piece of wire here, or go to the gas. What's that? That's right. Okay, now I'd like to introduce, what's your name? Barb, yeah, she's gonna take over. From now on. But it was just exactly that. That's where you learn common sense. Because, if something failed, something broke, you had to deal with it yourself. And that was part of growing up. And so I've always cherished that. As a matter of fact, when I was about 14, I said, I want to learn how to build a house and everything in it. And I did. And, I got to be feeling pretty good about myself, so I'm 17, 18-year-old kid, own a bunch of tools, have a tool belt. And so I thought I was a carpenter. I mean, I thought I was a master carpenter. I was a knucklehead who had tools, And anyway, I went up to a building site, and I said, do you need another carpenter? And the guy looked down at me, he goes, you a carpenter? I said, yeah, oh yeah. It's all right, carpenter. He says, you show up here 6 o'clock Monday morning. I thought, oh, okay, yeah. It's probably gonna have me, build the fireplace surround or stairway or. So I show up, and it was a little bit muddy that day. It was in March. And there was a stack of, these beams, 2x12s. Set off to one side. It was an apartment building they were building. And he says, all right, carpenter, move these to there. Way over the other side, they're like a couple 100 yards away. I thought, oh, okay, all right, well, I could do that. Well, obviously, all day long, all the next day. I think it was 3 days it took me. Mud, cold, So I stacked them, figured, okay, that was my test. That's the end of it. Nah. So a lumber truck came, delivering more lumber. And I figured he's going to have him set it over there. No, he had it right in his old spot. And then the boss says, all right, now you take this, go there. Oh, for crying out. So anyway, I went through, it was probably mid-April. It was still pretty muddy, and I was sore, just dragging every single day. But I wouldn't give up. I knew, well, he's trying to bust me, and so but the money was good. So it's about that time, he says, all right, carpenter. He says, you come inside, I show you. And so he said, I'll show you how to hold a hammer. Now, I thought I knew. I didn't. I had no idea, but he showed me how to hold a hammer when my wrist didn't get tired, where the hammer didn't, go off the nail. And I thought, this is cool. I can nail fast. He showed me how to hold the nails so you can, bum, bum, bum. And there were other carpenters around, obviously, and they're banging the spike in, 1, 2, boom, 1, 2. Well, I had to live up to that. And so I got to the point where I was the same way, boom, 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 putting in the floors and, having a great time. And I felt like, okay, now I'm a carpenter. Nah. The other guys still wouldn't even talk to me. At lunchtime, I'm eating lunch by myself. They're they're over there, they're laughing, and a couple of guys from Italy, a couple of guys, French-Canadian carpenters, and they were good carpenters. I just love watching them work. Anyway, maybe it was going into June, we were putting the roof on, and they had me standing on the joists. The roof wasn't on yet, the joists were there though, but I'm standing on the joists, and they're handing up sheets of plywood to a guy in the scaffolding, and then he's handing it up to the next guy who handed it up to me, and I was dropping it down onto the 3rd floor where a guy was stacking them, getting ready to sheathe in the roof. Well, we're doing that, all of a sudden, he hands me up one, and I go like this, and the guy's not down there. So and the wind's blowing. That's, I got a sheet of plywood like Mary Poppins up there. So I'm looking around. I was going to hand it back to the guy in the scaffolding. He's gone. And then I looked down and the guys, it was Corky and Dana. They came up the ladder just below my feet and nailed the edges of my boots into the joists. Bam, 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 bam. No, I'm like this, and they doubled, triple knotted my boots, and laughing. Boy, they were laughing their heads off. And then they take off for lunch, and I'm like this. And I look down, and there they are getting in their cars. It's, all right, John, have a good lunch. See you later. Bye. Well, anyway, I had to cut off the laces of my boots with my Stanley knife, and then I spent that whole lunchtime getting the nails out of the joists. They were the ring nails, the one you use for flooring so it doesn't squeak. Well, after that whole ordeal, and to this day, I think it's one of the happiest days of my life, because that was the day I was accepted by real carpenters. And but you have to go through that process. And that's what I find today, you know, in growing up and getting in, you know, I did some carpentry in England when I went over there to visit for 2 weeks and ended up staying 10 years. But at the beginning, it was my carpentry skills that kept me there. But then I got into acting in Los Angeles and acting and TV and some writing and directing, but I still kept my hand at it. In my truck right now, I have my carpentry tools, just in case, you know. You never know. Somebody might need some bookshelves built. But it's always good to have a skill that you could fall back on. And so I drilled that into my kids too. My daughter in college, she was the only co-ed with her own toolbox. And everybody would come to her and ask her, could you put a picture up, or, you know. So and I got her pink tools. You know, all pink toolbox, all pink tools, and so she was very proud of that. My son, after college, he was teaching, and he said, Dad, I want to be a plumber. I said, you go right ahead. I couldn't be prouder. And he went through 5 years of apprenticeship, and that's not easy. You out there who know what I'm talking about. But for him to get to the apprenticeship and the journeyman, that's not an easy task, especially with plumbing. You know, the angles, the degrees, tensile strengths, but he's doing that today. He'll probably call me later on today, tell me he always calls me to tell me about the houses he's crawled under that day. But he's happy as a clam, making a ton of dough, and he got the message. You know, whatever else he does in life, he's always got that skill. He owns that skill. I always tell young people, get a skill that nobody can take from you. So your company can close down tomorrow, but you'll find a job somewhere else the next day. Because that's the way I felt about carpentry. I can go anywhere in the world, and I'm working. You know, everybody needs a carpenter. Everybody needs a plumber, an electrician. Those are skills that they can't take away from you. You know, the government can do whatever the heck it wants. You're still going to be working. So when I was in Cheers and got to a point where they came to me as a travel channel, and they said that we got a show we're thinking about called Made in America. And I said, why do you come to me? And the guy said, he said, you got Made in America stamped on your forehead. And I said, yes, sir, I'm proud of that. So we did the show. We went on the road. I think it lasted 5 years. And one of the things I noticed when we go to factories, so my mother worked in a factory, and so I was used to them, and I was like home for me. But I noticed there were no young people. And I said, wait a minute. And I started getting more concerned and started asking questions to the CEOs and the foremen, and they said young people are not coming to it. They're not showing up, and when they do show up, we can't train them. because they're untrainable. I said, untrainable? And then I find out that shop classes had been canceled, pretty much nationwide. It was during the Clinton administration. And call me crazy, but that might have been a reason. They said, take the skills away from the young people because we're going to have manufacturing go someplace else. We don't need them. I mean, that's the situation we're in now. As you folks are, looking for employees that know what they're doing mechanically. Not an easy task anymore. But up here in a rural area, you probably still have shop classes at school. So it makes it a little bit easier. But nationwide, they're not teaching children how to use tools. And usually, when I question that with schools and what, they say, well, what if they hurt themselves? And I always look at them and say, what if they don't hurt themselves? Yeah, I went to shop class. I still got all 10. It was fine. My shop, Mr. Banny, he was our shop teacher. You wanted to learn how to do it right the first time because his breath really stunk. And you got your T-square trying to figure something out, and he come leaning over you, and your eyes would water. So you made sure you did the job right the first time. But it was a skill, and a lot of my friends this is in grammar school. A lot of them went on to go into professions in the trades, and they all did really well. I know 5 guys from that time who went to trade school. All 5 of them are multimillionaires now. It's like that old story of if you're on a deserted island, what profession would you like to have with you? You can choose one profession. Is it going to be a medieval art student, or going to be a carpenter? What do you choose? Because it comes down to common sense. That's where common sense lives. And you guys know it better than anybody because farmers have the most common sense. See, if it were up to me, it'd be a requirement for any president, anybody running for president, to have been a farmer. And if you can't do that, then what are you telling me what to do for? You can't get that done. You can't fix this or, fix the leak. Well, then where do you get the gall to tell me how to run my life and my family? But as here I'm bringing sand to the beach, I know, because you folks know what you're doing. But I'm here to tell you out there, it's dire. It really is. The people. I went to Congress twice talking about this because I have a friend who's vice president of Turner Construction, big construction company. They build airports and baseball stadiums. And he said they can't find carpenters, electricians, welders. So I brought him and a couple other people to Congress, and we gave evidence. This had to be close to 10 years ago now, saying, look, we're going to be in big trouble because whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you got to drive across the same bridge. And those of you who still read the newspaper, you see that's happening now. Bridge collapse, another train derailment. And even if you keep up with the airlines, what's going on with the airlines. Now, I know the fact that we're running out of pilots. We're running out of airplane pilots. Now, the airline's not going to tell you that because their stock price will drop. They're not going to say, you can't find anybody to fly our planes. The door's opening just in queue. We got the band coming in now. There he is. Hey, Drew. Yeah, I just want to say hi. There he is, the man of the hour.
We didn't want him to go to sleep, get hot, and hear you talk.
So you're saying I'm boring is what you're saying, Drew. I drove all this way. But anyway, so, okay. It was for fresh air, he says, yeah. I've known Drew now for a number of years, and I'll tell those stories some other time. But so we went to Congress and said we have to reinstate shop classes nationwide. You have to do it. You have to teach young children how to use tools. You know, back in the medieval days, the Jesuits, they have a saying, give us the boy till he's 5 and I'll give you the man. So those first 5 years are very important. And luckily, actually, I don't know, my mother realized it or we just didn't have money to buy toys. So she'd pick up an old junk radio somewhere, cut off the electrical cord. I was like 3, 4 years old. Put it in front of me, some tools. I said, go take it apart. I love doing that. Just tinkering. And that's what civilization is based on. Tinkerers. People who aren't a stranger to tools. You know, like the Wright brothers, Thomas Edison. You know, Thomas Edison had a 3rd grade education. That's Thomas Edison. His headmaster took him home once, said to his mother, your son is uneducatable. Okay, well. So what he did, they lived in near Lake Erie, near a boatyard, and he would go down the boatyard as a kid and just get involved with whatever was going on with the guys building and repairing the boats. So he learned a little bit about this, a little bit about that. That's how he became Thomas Edison. You know, he didn't go to a school, say, invent the light bulb school. You know. But that's in the phonograph too. Even as a matter of fact, as a kid, I built a working phonograph out of an erector set. I was like 6 years old. But there was nobody telling me I couldn't do it. You know, you figure out the process, the logic of it, the sound goes from here, it travels there, and you can figure it out. It's not a mystery. But we need more of that in our schools, and how to do that, I've been trying for a lot of years. I formed a foundation called Nuts, Bolts, and Thingamajigs, and we have summer camps for kids, teaching them how to use machinery, like CNC machines, computer-controlled machines. Because I had uncles who they were tool and die makers, and it was funny in Thanksgiving, you know, the family gathers. These guys, Art and Bob, they would talk about tolerances of 1/20,000th of an inch. And they would talk about it as though the fate of Western civilization depended on it. And I'm a kid, 10 years old, so I'm making fun of them. I figured that was my job. Somebody had to. And then the older I got, I realized they were exactly right. The fate of Western civilization depends on people who can hone a piece of metal down to 1/20,000th of an inch. But they were so proud of it, and I didn't understand it. I just thought, you go to a factory, you do this. But it really is astounding, the skills that go into it, and these folks never get the applause for it. As a matter of fact, sometimes when I pick up my mother from Remington Arms is where she worked, and on the cold winter days, the snow was blowing, wind was howling, and I'd pick her up and she'd come out like this with all her workmates and scurry to the car. And I thought, there really should be an audience out here in bleachers, just applauding every single day, saying thank you, thank you, thank you for what you do, because the rest of us depend on what you do, as you in this room. You know, the rest of the country depends on what you do, with all that land out there. And you have to know what you're doing. And I know that here, because you have young people that probably work on your properties or around it, it may not be as shocking to you the kids seem to know what they're doing. I'm not sure about you. Just kidding. I'll probably be working for you someday. But out there in the hinterland, the cities, I've spoken at colleges, high schools, and most of the children, I call them children, college kids, they can't read a ruler. Think about that. I got a yardstick or a pocket ruler I take out, say, show me 5 1/8. They look at you like deer in headlights. And these are people about to get a college degree. They can't read a ruler. Because where in their career would they have read a ruler? If their parents aren't showing them, if they don't have a job doing that, there's no place in their universe. Somebody goes, okay, here's 3.5 feet, but it doesn't exist. So that's what we're up against, especially talking about the defense of the United States. Somebody's got to build the boats, the airplanes, the armament. Someone needs to build that stuff. I have a relationship with 6 Sauer guns up in New Hampshire, and they're hurting. They're doing whatever they can to move people from other states, fly them in. But anybody who can machine metal properly, they'll give you the world. And that's everybody. That's so anybody looking for a job, talk to me, I'll send you along there. But anyway, so that's why, organizations like this, when you're talking about Made in America, Support America, well, that's the first thing you have to look at. That's the first thing you have to look at, because there's no sense in sending people off to war saying, all right, here's a broom handle, pretend it's a rifle, and just go ba-boom, ba-boom. It doesn't work. Whatever equipment they get has to work. Somebody has to build that equipment, and they have to do it properly, because your life depends on it. Our lives depend on it. And so that's why I'm so adamant about children knowing how to use tools. And I was hoping that my son would call right about now. This is when he does. And I'd put him on the microphone here, and you could hear what he's a big kid. So every time he has to crawl under a house, I said, what was the clearance? About 11 inches. I just laugh. But it's not making fun of him, just because I know he's making more money than I am. So he's laughing all the way to the bank. But it was extraordinary. I didn't push him towards plumbing either. My arena of expertise has always been carpentry. As a matter of fact, Drew, I wanted to talk to you about some of these beams. Not later. But anyway, we're going to have, you're coming up to sing, aren't you? Somebody singing?
Yeah, but we get Roxetta covered.
Who?
Roxetta, she covered the night one, so you don't have to do it.
Oh, no, well, weren't you going to, who was it? Oh, okay, anyway, any questions? I mean, I could be up here for 2 hours. You guys will be going to sleep. All right, there's Barb over here has a question, ladies and gentlemen.
How are we progressing with having these classes in schools?
Not at all.
Not
Not at all. See, this is also, what you're up against is the war on boys. That's been going on at least 30 years. Anything masculine, they don't like. That's anything that reeks of testosterone, they don't like. It's, but it's actually a war on boys. So, I'm trying to think of a light at the end of the tunnel there. Well, unless you're in a rural area like this, and you understand the value of that. No, in the cities, in the suburbs, no, not gonna happen. Because don't forget, kids, when's the last time you saw a bunch of kids building a tree house? You know,
I'm in Florida, no,
you're in Florida? Somebody want to tell her she's not in Florida? This is Colorado. You're in Colorado. Oh, thank God she knows. But anyway, yeah, no, it's a tough road to get schools to do the, because you got the school superintendent, and you got the committee.
If they also should be doing some things for the females, teaching them how to change a tire and do some basic things.
Yeah. So it's your job.
My brother did that for me.
Yeah, you got. I mean, you know, it's, my kid, I wouldn't let him have a car unless they knew how to change a tire. But that just goes, you know, goes with.
Someone has to teach you.
That's with the package. But it's tough. Anything that smacks of masculinity. I mean, even in one of my jobs, I was a traveling carpenter. I ended up helping build the stage at Woodstock. You've heard of Woodstock? Not my fault. Matter of fact, if I had known what a mess those idiots make of, you know, what we're in now, I would have rigged the stage to collapse. It was something. And then I was there watching the National Guard rescue Woodstock. There was no food, no porta potties, medicine. It was a mess. It was a real mess. And people were fighting. You never saw that on TV, obviously, because it's 3 days of peace and music. My keister. It was a mess. And all of a sudden, helicopters come in. And I was driving a tractor too, so part of my job was to go get the equipment and the goods off the helicopters and bring them down to the center stage. And I wondered, I said, how come nobody knows about this? The press never said the National Guard saved Woodstock. Because Woodstock was all about anti-military, right? So the press don't say anything, because then the hippies look bad and the army looks good. But that's exactly what happened. And years later, Hillary Clinton, you've heard of her, she recommended to have a statue erected at the site of Woodstock to commemorate the event. And I chimed in and said, yeah, put a statue there, but have it be of a National Guardsman feeding a crying hippie, you know, on his lap, you know, with a baby bottle. Because that's the truth. That's what happened. But the press doesn't want you to know that. You know? But anyway, was there another question? You know, what's your question? I've got a question for you. Did you ever see Hand Me the Pig? No? Never saw a Pixar movie? No, that's all right. I still got paid. I don't care. Yeah, go ahead.
Have you thought about partnering with Mike Rowe? I mean, I know.
I approached him, and he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to share the spotlight.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's unfortunate. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is. Because I thought same thing you're thinking. I thought
What a great.
we could go 1-2 punch, right? You know. Well, being in Congress, it would have been more powerful to have two of us there. Not interested. I tried it 2 or 3 times.
That would have been a symbiotic relationship.
What's that?
That would have been a nice symbiotic relationship.
Oh, yeah. It makes sense. But he doesn't want to share the spotlight. Because don't forget, he's also an actor. So,
Your friend Kirstie Alley died recently. Can you tell us about her?
Kirsty? Yeah. She was the best. She really, boy, when she threw a party, she didn't take prisoners, that's for sure. I think it was at Easter. She had Easter eggs hidden all over her property. She had a couple of acres down there in Encino. It's the old Al Jolson estate, what they call it. Anyway, and she dressed up as a princess, and the food was fantastic, and she invited all the cast and their families, the crew and their families, their cousins visiting from out of state. It was fantastic. And right at the end of the day, just exhausted, sitting on the lawn, wife and kids, and all of a sudden I heard something. It was like, the USC marching band coming up the driveway. She had booked the entire USC marching band. It's a good day. That's who Kirstie was. Just terrific gal. But her father owned a lumber yard in Kansas City. So she knew how to swing a hammer, that's for sure. That's for sure. Anything else?
What's your favorite role that you've ever played?
Say again?
What's the favorite role that you've ever played as an actor?
It's something you never hear about, because we did a 2-man comedy troupe, me and a buddy of mine who was also American, but we went through Europe for 6 or 7 years doing our own brand of comedy. He went off to become an undercover cop. He was in the mafia undercover, and he just recently retired. But it was one of the characters I did during that show. It used to crack me up. I made eyeglasses out of the bottom of Coke bottles, and glass cutter and the candle and all that. Epoxy on coat hangers, and so things like that. And I was a superhero. But whenever the alarm went off, I couldn't see. So I kept jumping up, and there's the window. I kept hitting the wall. So Rome could be burning, and I can't even get out the door. It was a lot of fun for me. But other than that, Cliff was fun. I mean, that was like stealing money. When you think of it, the job description, I sat at a bar for 11 years, getting paid to crack jokes. Yeah, okay, I'll take the job. Yeah. Does it have insurance too? Yeah.
Just a piece of trivia for you, because I think you'll appreciate this. I was military in a flying squadron, and there's always a funny story about how people get their call signs. One of the guys in our squadron seemed to be a know-it-all. His call sign was Cliff.
I love him already. He's a genius. Because I always tell people that are called Cliff for that reason, said, all that means is that you know a lot. And that's really a badge of honor, because it means you read a lot, you're curious, and you don't mind, correcting people, even when not asked, But anyway. Is that it?
Could you address your faith and how that's played a role in your life?
Oh, sure. I grew up Catholic, Irish Catholic neighborhood. So I was in a lot of fights, basically. That's all that says. Because the Irish like to do that. But no, I go to parochial school, grammar school, and I was an altar boy, and that's just part of who I am. I have a deep belief in God, the power of the Lord, and it's just won't be shaken. But that's the other thing that we have to address is putting God back in schools. Yeah, the 1963 that was taken out. And so now everyone's scratching their head like, how come these kids are running wild and stealing and duh. You told them that it was okay in a way because you take God out of schools, you're telling all these kids that there's no God, and if there's no God, that means there's no devil, and that means there's no right, there's no wrong. And the same thing even with the Beatles songs. Imagine there's no heaven, imagine there's no hell. Okay, I can do anything I want. And that's why it's just, when these talking heads on TV start talking about it, no one mentions the fact that there's no God in schools. And that's kept us on the straight and narrow, and also the Irish cops. You didn't want to get caught by them, that's for sure. But that's exactly what it is. A sense of right and wrong. We didn't have security cameras anywhere because we thought God was watching us. And so, yeah, no, it's just part of my makeup. Yeah.
To follow up on that, have there been any roles that you've turned down or things that you didn't do?
Yeah.
Because they didn't fit with your
Absolutely. Yeah, that's why I'm not a major motion picture star. Because I remember giving Woody a hard time when he did Natural Born Killers. He was so excited. I said, that's just what we need. Another movie glorifying psychotic killers. Just what the country needs. And he said, what are you, my father? Anyway, it's a long story. But, yeah, there's, because I always was conscious of my kids and now my grandkids. And I want them to see at a young age, the father on screen doing something that you got to explain later on in life. And so, but anyway, yeah. So if there's any jobs going, I got my carpentry tools with me, so I can afford a suit like that. That's a great suit. Really, that's just so, I love that. What's that? What are you yelling at her for? You did a what? A debt pill?
Get your tool.
You're talking about building a deck on your home? Well, why didn't you say something? I got there's probably another 5 hours of daylight. Tomorrow is open for me. So you got to have a deck. Make sure you have, the posts in the ground on a bed of gravel in the hole. You know what that's about. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to yield. Did you have your hand up there, young lady? No.
Here's one right here.
Hey. Hi.
Is there a role you ever regret turning away?
Oh, yeah. There are movies. I was approached with the movie Dumb and Dumber to produce it. And I read it and I thought, this is stupid. Sure was. But everybody's got a story like that in Hollywood. You know, things you turn down. I don't want to tell you anymore because you'll feel too bad for me. Well, thank you. Thank you. God bless you.